Hey, Ed, thanks for taking some time to talk to me today about you and your business. Really excited to hear about your background and what got you into what you're doing now. So, can you kind of walk us through your background and how you got started with your business?
No, yeah, Eamon, thanks so much for having me on today. I really appreciate it. So I like to sort of say I've gotten into the consulting and the practice I've built in pretty much the most non-traditional way possible. My background soon after high school and my what I consider my past life was military, joined the Army, served with the infantry for about 12 years, and then came out and was like, okay, now what do we do? Going through that veterans transition and finding, okay, let's plan Z, go back to school, and through that process, it was like, okay, now got business background. I know I want to go into consulting. I enjoy problem solving. And I'm tired of saying yes sir, no sir, and working for somebody else. So made the decision to go out, put my flag on the wall. I started doing a lot of early development, early leadership development work, working with middle managers and supervisors. And in the past decade, I've been able to transition that into much more of a strategic practice where now I work with organizations on organizational design, cultural and strategic implementations, and really helping growing organizations find the internal means to continue to be scaled.
Amazing. Thank you for your service. I'm a Marine Corps veteran as well, so I appreciate that. And yeah, no, definitely a lot of similarities between us, so that's awesome. Obviously, you were attracted to working for yourself, after the yes sir, no sir phase of life. Was there something specific that attracted you to this area of consulting? Can you kind of walk us through that?
No, absolutely. So wanted to go into consulting, loved business problem solving, finished up the MBA and at Babson College, which is a very entrepreneurial school. We had entrepreneurship written on the wall every day coming to class. So there was definitely some inspiration there. And it's like, okay, how can I deliver value to customers? How can I work with people? And it was leaning back into my background. I trained, led, and developed people for 12 years. And how can I help expand on that? So starting to go to local organizations, local chambers. Hey, tell me about some of the problems your members are having. How can I help you guys with leadership? How can I help you guys develop some of your teams a little stronger? And through doing small seminars and just kind of kicking off and developing that book of business over time is what's led to much greater scale with projects and working with larger clients, working across various industries, and always focusing on that human aspect. Organizations were made up of people. It's who gets all the work done. How do we optimize that? How do we attract? How do we build the teams that can act on these strategies, especially against in today's marketplaces where it's disruption is the name of the game.
That's awesome. So when you're going to these companies, do you have like a typical type of company that you look at, or is there like an employee count that you need to hit like to make an impact? Like walk us through that.
Absolutely. My favorite companies I like to call late stage growth. So they've been on that hockey stick trajectory, and now they've hit that phase where we need to continue to scale. Maybe it's post acquisition, maybe it's they've just saturated their market and they're looking to internally reorganize in order to build the teams, and we want to keep growing. We want to go after the strategy. We're still lean, we're still hungry, but the flat hierarchy just isn't working for us. And I've seen organizations that hit that at 150 people. I've seen organizations that hit that at 20 people. And largely, how do we organize for that continued success? What do we need to develop for lines of communication? How do we delineate areas of responsibilities? How do we build the department structure that is going to be scalable over time rather than just bolting somebody else onto the organization?
What's that look functionally like day to day for you when you're working with your clients? So I'm just wondering like what does that functionally look?
So for me, it's a lot of coaching. I take a very bespoke approach with every one of my clients because every one of their situations, every one of their markets, industry, internal structures has been entirely unique. And we want to preserve that. We want to preserve those strengths. So I don't come in saying, I don't come in as one of the Bobs. We're not here to make this massive change management procedure or practice. We're here to make the tweaks. We're here to make the small changes over time that we know this is where we want to be in 12 months. Okay, so what are the next 6 months of small changes that we need to make to lay the foundation in order to get us to that point? So it's working with the executive teams. It's having those coaching conversations. Okay, what's the values of the organization? What do we think are some of our best practices? How do we turn that into a process we can replicate? At the same time, What about our processes can we continue to learn and develop from? We don't want all of our innovation organization to be top-down driven, because giving some agency to our people, giving some the ability for people to affect the changes they want to see matters a lot, especially I found with those types of organizations where you have that good energy and that's still that entrepreneurial spirit. How do we preserve that? So how do we build these iterative learning modalities into our processes so that, military guy, things like AARs are just a natural fit into what we do. And so that's a big piece of it. It's a lot of just taking time, doing that deep analysis, getting to know the personalities, getting to know the people, getting to know the mission, and then how do we execute? And then what do we need to do to execute better? And I've always found it's those little things. It's fun being that consultant that have come into organizations and there's that eye roll. It's like, oh, here's somebody else. It'll be 3 months and we can go right back to the way things used to be. And my goal is I'm going to leave in 6-9 months, and they're going to go, holy, how did we get here? That's a win for me.
Amazing. I like how you mentioned AARs for everybody that's listening, after action reviews. I haven't seen a lot of companies that do that successfully.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you implement that with a civilian group? Like, talk to us a little bit about that. That's interesting.
Absolutely. It's one of our most powerful tools. It's, after you do a drill, after you do a mission, after you do whatever scenario and dry run, what went well? What didn't? How do we do better next time? And it turns into just a leadership piece. It's having people be comfortable receiving upwards feedback and be comfortable soliciting it. And what division do we see that this could be implemented early? Where are there repeatable processes where we do see those natural pauses where we can say, hey, real quick, rank off what's going on. How are things working out here? And what do we need to do better next time? Because this is something we do frequently. And encouraging people just to build that into their structures and their organization. It is, especially for people who aren't used to it. I love those first couple weeks of the conversation because the bosses they're terrified to give the agency and ask for the feedback. The employees, the people are often terrified to offer it. But as soon as you start to get those conversations going, and as soon as you start to see those first little tweaks and changes that are suggested being implemented and people see the success of that implementation, now we just have the catalyst. And it's that chemical reaction that just goes across the organization where we start small. We get those little sample cases. We get those little proofs of concept. We get people comfortable with the idea. And now we've got social capital. Now we've got social proof that, boom, hey, we did this over here. We got this feedback. We made this change in our customer processes. We made this change in how we handle disputes or whatever it might be. Okay, what else can we apply this to? How else does this feed into our operations? And as soon as you get those crosstalk going, as soon as you develop that little cultural artifact, it's absolutely amazing. Sometimes times where I've seen that wildfire take off. But it's that the hardest part is those first couple of weeks where people just are uncomfortable, where they're just kind of sitting around and nobody really wants to talk. And it's like, what do we think? What do we think? And sometimes you just cold call somebody. How did this go for you? And give them that space where they feel the agency, where they feel the psychological safety, where they feel just that amount of inclusion where their work matters. And as soon as people start to feel that, then it just builds that desire to contribute and desire to improve, because all of a sudden they see, wait, there's a possibility for improvement, and then we see the proof of improvement.
I love how you put that. That's great. And brings me back to my Marine Corps days. I have a question though for you. Military leadership is like very present leadership. You're there, oftentimes 24/7, in the trenches, etc. Consultant leadership is oftentimes very not present. You're there checking in, maybe a couple times a week, at most. Or how do you work it? Do you like fully embed in the companies that you work with, or are you working with multiple companies at one time doing check-ins? Like, how do you manage that, for yourself?
No, certainly. My projects are intensive. So I have one, maybe two clients at any given time, and cap off at, 5 to 6 a year. And we're making some changes in 26 where I want to operationalize a few of the commonalities I've had between clients. And we're exploring some ways of doing that for next year. But I love the bespoke approach. I love taking the human and the time to get to know people, because it's just rewarding. You see those light bulb moments, you see the change, the project is starting to come to a close. The whole tone of the organization can be just incredibly different. And it's just worth going in and embedding for a little while.
Awesome. Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about your systems, your
Mhm.
tools, things like that. What are you using now to manage these clients or manage like new clients? Like what are your key tools or systems that you're leveraging?
Documentation is one of the big things because I want to be able to say week after week, here's where we are, here's where we're at, here's where we're planning to go and what we need to do. Here's the changes that have worked. Here are things that might need some more refining before we can start bridging them out across the organization. So project management tools like Trello has been fantastic for me just to keep track of, okay, who's doing what, where, when. For me, the same thing, just old school CRM as we do for outreach and as we build out that client base just to keep all of those conversations organized. I found that for me in building the practice, that's kind of the best practice. As long as I can go back and say, okay, here's what I was talking about this person on last Tuesday. I'm not trying to keep it up here. I can go back, review my notes, see where we're at, and then move forward. It also helps just with the case history. Other tools for me, I mean, I love LinkedIn. It's been fantastic just to be able to engage and talk on there. It's actually the only real social media I use. I've got a little bit going up on Substack lately as I just produce a little bit more content as part of that operational piece I was talking about earlier. But the tech enablement for me is largely an organizational piece, is largely how do I optimize my time? How do I not rely on my own rote memory in order to make this happen? My favorite investment has been actual remarkable. So the little digital pad and just to be able to take notes in the meetings, not have any distractions on the screen, and then have those notes in a safe, secure system. German GPDR is great for information security. And so being able to have that sort of trusted space in order to keep large scale digital notes. Years and years ago, I had that stack of notebooks and I'm going back through it like, okay, I don't know what's where when. And so again, just the digital organization's been instrumental in helping just keep track.
That's really cool. So that's essentially like you can write on it like it's a notepad, but it's digital and then
It's all digital. It's all uploads in the PDF. It's a secure cloud. And then from that, I can, okay, here's my case notes. Here's my client notes. Even here's my prospecting pieces and ideas. If I have an idea even about content, I can just, those middle of the night wake ups, you jot it down on the post-it note to get out of your head when it's keeping you awake. And, a third of the time in the morning, you know what you're talking about, but at least you
and
got it down.
yeah, definitely. So you and it can organize and does this file
Mm-hmm.
management. And that's
Yep.
great. And you said you're using Trello for your project management and your
Mm-hmm. I have Trello is the tool I use for my project management, and that's been great just for the overall flow of okay, organizationally, here's what we're doing, here's what we want to focus on, and also project base, here's where we're at with this project. So basically, keeping two different boards there for that, and then CRM, I actually use a little program called Less Annoying CRM. Which is the most bare bones, stripped down CRM I could find that, okay, works with my email. I can keep my client notes. I can keep my calendar notes. I can get reminders when I need them. Boom. It's an easy, nice, light solution versus trying to do a full HubSpot implementation or anything like that. It's me and my assistant. We don't need anything that fancy.
right. Cool. Cool. Talk to me about like innovation, like whether it's like innovation in how you're delivering to your clients or maybe something that you've just figured out that works really well. Can you tell us a little bit about that and like what that means for you?
Definitely. I love to think about the innovation side of all of this simply because like all of us consultants, we're all doing a lot of leadership development. We do a lot of strategic implementations, but we all do it within our own way. For me, the difference that I've been able to bring to the table is that infantry sergeant mentality is this is about the teams. It's about the people. And it's really getting it down to that nuts and bolts basics on what are our processes? What are our drills? What do we do with things? How are we building in the contingency planning? How are we testing that? How are we building continuous improvement into it? And it's building that into the organization versus a much more overall, 5-year strategic plan mindset that somebody else might bring. That's been a big differentiator for me. And it's something I've gotten a lot of great feedback around is being able to, because I've got the MBA, I teach strategy, I teach organizational behavior. So I've got my access to all of the big theory. How do we ground it in reality? How do we come back down to say, okay, here's what the Academy of Management is saying about leaders in organizations. Here's the new studies on emotional intelligence, psychological safety, organizational design, strategic implementations. great. I'm glad the academics have been doing all that work. It's fascinating. At the same time, how is it relevant? What is it? How do we make it real in today's organizations when we have, okay, our hybrid modality is just not working. People aren't talking to one another. Return to office has just been forgotten about, or our market is shifting because this AI thing is we just don't know what's going to come next, and are we going to see some new industry disruptions that we've got to prepare for? And being able to help people draw those parallels, draw that conclusion, and go from having feet in both ponds to saying, no, here's the actual implementable change and basic changes we need to make in order to continue to be adaptive, to be innovative, in order to, adapt, improvise, overcome the way we've been trained for ages. I think that's such a competitive advantage for any organization if you can really build it in. And it starts from the top, but it's really empowering and enabling those grassroots teams to act and make those changes within their lanes as they need to.
What's your biggest challenge when trying to make these changes in organizations? I'm sure there's a bunch, change.
There's a bunch. I mean, and it's honestly
There's one thing, what's like the one challenge that you see come up time and time again?
the biggest challenge is people's comfort with it. And because I'm asking people to go outside of their comfort zones. I'm looking at bosses and saying, I love that you have an open door policy. When was the last time you used it? And getting people to, especially senior supervisors, to start initiating those conversations, to build that trust, to build that rapport within the organization where we take away those stratification divides. That has been getting people comfortable with that, getting people feeling empowered towards that is the biggest challenge. And I admit it is completely uncomfortable and it is awkward conversations. But it's not the show Undercover Boss. If you're not here to disguise yourself to get into your organization to find out what's going on, you should be able to head down onto that shop floor, have those conversations, and okay, what's happening here? What's going on? How are things going with you? And until the higher up initiates that trust, nobody's ever going to use that open door policy otherwise. So getting people to use it first, from higher to lower, in order to build the bridge that we can get those conversations now going from lower.
I have to ask, have you ever used the undercover boss trick on any of your leaders?
No, I've not, because I want them to be authentic. I want them to be them. I'm not here to say you need to disguise and go in there. Have that tough conversation. Be awkward for a couple weeks if it needs to be, to get people to and let people see that you're comfortable doing this and get comfortable with discomfort. I'd rather see that and get a better authentic feeling, because that's what's going to continue after I leave. That's the pieces that can remain, that becomes a lasting impression versus what happened that one time when he was down here with a mask on and things changed for Bob, but didn't really help the rest of the organization, versus tearing down the barriers and having that rip off the Band-Aid moment of this is tough, this is hard, but this is something that if we really want to see these changes happen, we need to do.
I'd love to get your take on something. Obviously we had COVID and the emerging trend of more remote work, and then a lot of companies going back to the office, and then some are staying hybrid. What's your take on, the trend of working from home versus working in the office versus part-time? Like, where do you see that? Where do you see companies that are successful, not successful? Like, what are your thoughts?
Definitely. This is a great one. We traditionally in organizations, we see two barriers: stratification, the up and down, or the siloing. What we've seen lately here in the last couple of years is there's absolutely a digital divide. When people just try to do business through screens, it misses a lot of the context, it misses a lot of the relationships. But at the same time, it brings a lot of value into the organization because you can have that spread workforce, you can have that distribution. And helping organizations within that hybrid modality, how do we maximize this? When do we need people in the office? And not just saying, hey, you need to be in the office because we want you in the office. People don't respond to mandates well. It's, you're going to get pushback every single time if you just tell somebody to do something that's not objective. But if you show people the value for coming in the office, this is when we have our collaboration meetings, this is when we get the crosstalk going, then you make it worth their commute to get in there. By all means, go for it. Long before COVID, I actually had a small tech company I was working with here. They had about a dozen people here in Boston and 300 spread across the rest of the US. And it was every couple of months that they brought a share of those 300 back here into the home office, and they footed the bill, flew them in, put them up to maintain those personal ties. And that was also part of their onboarding process. If they brought in a new person that was one of these sales and account reps, come to the home office, get to know people, get to know our product, work on all of your onboarding, and then we're going to send you out there knowing who you're going to talk to here. And I've seen a number of startups here replicating that. It's easy when you're in the startup phase because you can foot the bill for not so many people, but as you grow and scale, finding ways to do that. There was one manufacturer I talked to last year. They have basically the big family fun day, and they ship everybody up from their remote plant up here to New England to take part. And they provide them the travel opportunity to do that and the time off and for them and their families. And it is just the CEO, it's for him, it's one of those major pieces of the organization that he's not going to give up. And he's willing to take that expense. And I think things like that is how you make it work. Is we can connect a lot through the screen. We can get a lot of work done. We can really keep that distributed workforce and have a great piece of the digital, but we can't neglect the personal touch. So finding ways to include that, the more the better, in my opinion, because that's how you build the relationships. Otherwise, you see the statistics we're seeing around hybrid work, around remote work, where they're more likely to get laid off. We're seeing their performance scores drop, and okay, they did their job. It was time to task. What else can we say about them? Which means they're missing out on promotions, bonuses, and career growth. And if we want to avoid that, we have to have the strong network.
Amazing. Lots of great insight there.
Thank you.
I'm sure. I guess maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm not sure. I want to hear from you. How is it difficult measuring success when you're coming into a company? Like, how do you have like KPIs that you track? I know obviously that's a consultant thing to say.
No, that's a very consultant thing to say. And I've had this open discussion with a lot of people in the field because, oh, it's leadership, it's fuzzy wuzzy, you're never going to be able to measure it. Yeah, you are. But you've got to do the legwork to tie it into, okay, increased performance, increased learning curve ability, increased adaptation. How does that affect the core KPIs we track as a business? How does that affect those core metrics that are important to us? And how does that feed into the overall strategic picture of the organization? It requires a lot of legwork. It requires a lot of extra work. For human resources, it's not a matter of, oh, yeah, 100% of people or 95% of the organization went through the training this year. It's okay. What does that training change? What are we looking for increased uptime? What are we seeing for better process understanding? Do we see an increased learning curve for new employees where they learn the job faster? And how does that factor into our operational cost and cost savings? If we have better, if it's a sales enabler, does it build increased revenue? And being able to enable at the executive and director scale of things that crosstalk between divisions. Hey, I'm doing this. Here's how it affects me. And here's how it affects your division. Or I want to do this. What's going to happen over here for your employees and your team? Once you get that crosstalk going, now we can build a more holistic picture. Now we can say, okay, I'm doing X. It's going to affect you with Y and going to affect the organization with Z. So it's a lot of communication. It requires a lot deeper collaboration. And it is the first thing that gets killed when we see siloing, because I can't say the amount of junior executives I see there that want this program implementation. They have this great idea of what they want to put in their division. And they put it together, and here's all my KPIs, and here's how it's going to affect my division. And they don't receive the mentorship to help them build that strategic view. Okay, here's what you want to do. That's great. I'm glad it's going to affect your division like that. How does that scale into the rest of the organization? How does that build and enable everyone else? How does that make you more effective at your job, that therefore bridge into operations and finance, marketing, sales, whatever else it's going to touch? So helping people draw that parallel at that senior level is instrumental. And it's also one of them, like you said earlier, this is the other very difficult piece because it's uncomfortable with conversations. It's crosstalk. We really want to measure cross-divisional effectiveness. We got to get that cross-divisional conversation.
Very interesting. In the next 6 to 12 months, where do you see yourself at? Where do you see your business?
26 is an exciting time. I'm really looking forward to. We have been codifying a lot of everything I've done across clients for a long time now in the last 10 years, doing a little bit more publications, We've got a major piece that we're starting to go to publishers for. So looking at a book release. At the same time, some of our best practices are, they're human standard. It's not just industry standard. So how do we build almost a training program or a way to implement at least some of these little things that people can do and build leadership effectiveness? So we're exploring some routes on how to build our outreach and build just sort of the program around that. So that's, like any business owner, I'm here to, work on the business, not in the business. I love doing the consulting. I love doing that personal delivery, and I'll always be doing a piece of that. But increased speaking opportunities have been growing quite a bit, more formalized IP, which has been fantastic to develop and see how we can reach a broader breadth of people in order just to, for me, like every entrepreneur, I want to save the world. And I believe it starts with how do we build better relationships in organizations. So finding new ways to do that is all about 26.
Awesome. Awesome. That's exciting. If you could wave a magic wand to remove one obstacle to hitting those goals, like what would that be?
Publisher negotiations. It's tricky. It's building the right team and finding the right partners is always the hardest part. So being able to go out and have those productive conversations, find the right people who are going to help in the right ways. The solopreneur is a complete myth, and I wouldn't be where I am today if I just relied on myself. So finding those right key partners, if I could wave a magic wand, I would make that a little bit easier.
Yeah, I love that. And that's great advice. And I have to ask you, do you have any other advices for either coaches or consultants that are looking to jump into, maybe launching their own thing or who recently did? Do you have any advice for those folks?
Absolutely. It's such a challenge. It's such a great opportunity for us in this organization and where we're at in our lives. Once you have something valuable to bring and a way to help people, by all means, don't be afraid to do it. But it's also, you bring the passion in, you also have to bring in the business side of it and understanding how to network, how to build that team around you, how to develop your processes for going out and building the business is a major piece of it. And as much as we love to get up on stage and talk, that's why I'm traveling here soon. It's all the legwork to get up there. Don't be very cognizant of how much of that time and the investment you're going to have to make.
Good advice. Really good advice. So, Ed, appreciate your time today. If anybody listens to this and wants to look you up or see what you do, how can they find you?
Two great places to find me is my website, leadfromthefront.net. And then also, like I said earlier, I've kicked off my Substack. We're putting out some great pieces and stories out there about leadership development in organizations, leadfromthefront.substack.com. If you check out those two places, you're going to find a wealth of information about building up your organization, building up your people.
Awesome, Ed. That's great stuff. Everybody go check those places out. Appreciate your time today, Ed. Thank you.
No, thank you. I appreciate it.